curious. There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called Curious Conversation. Curious Conversation.
So everybody, welcome to episode 16. I'm pretty sure it's 16 now of Curious Conversations. And today, as always, joined by super epic people that I'm really inspired by. And we just had a bit of a drop in beforehand and felt into our intentions. And I want to bring mine forward to navigate this conversation for the people that are listening. Is right now I have people that are creating epic culture and have continued and have years of creating culture in queer spaces, queer safe spaces, and especially here in Sydney, where I live, Sydney, Australia. I'm here on Gadigal land, and I am excited to talk to these three because I still feel quite distant, and where I sort of would like to start off with in why they're here and what I'm here to learn and what I want to share with my audience is, as someone that's still a bit of a queer baby in the manner of like how I've been out, and I remember years of going just once a year, I'd go check out Mardi Gras. And even as someone that had to some level embraced my queerness, I still felt like, oh, yay, look at how much fun they're having. I feel so much pride for them. And wasn't about me. I never understood the pride for myself because I was not connected to any culture, any spaces where that was going on. And Mardi Gras is just maybe a bit too overwhelming for me to go, oh, this feels like my people, you know? And maybe in the last year or two, I think the first queer party I went to was last year, which was a Club Cookie event at I don't know what the venue's called off the top of my head right now, but I went there and I was slowly going, oh my God, are these my people? Am I part of this somehow? I know one person here. That's crazy. And yeah, I want to go on a journey into how I found myself in these spaces and how I come aware of these people that are here and their journeys and what that culture means to them and where the past created now and where the future is going. So I'm going to go do a little round table of introducing the people and just this little personal experiences of who they are to me and how I became aware. So I'm going to start with Jonny Seymour. Hello. And how I first became aware of you was I was dating a man for a little bit early this year or maybe late last year. And we go into the bearded tit. Everyone's told me about the bearded tit. You've got to go there. You'll feel family. And it was just like a normal day. It wasn't queerhood. And I go in and it's you and George, your dog, and just this vibrant energy. As soon as I walk in, I think no one else was there. It's just you DJing, someone at the bar, got some food, me and this man. And yeah, just this loving energy. And then I met you again briefly at the George Michael tribute theater thing. I can't remember what it was, the Rise of...
Rise and Fall of St. George.
George, yes. And just this warm energy. I was like, oh shit, you don't even know me. And it's we've been friends forever. I love this guy, whoever he is, whoever they are, sorry. I've got to learn more, you know? And then Brendan Maclean talking the world of you and the bearded tit, and I need to go there. I'm going to take you. You're going to meet everyone. So Brendan was probably my first person in the bigger queer community family that sort of was an in for me. And And yeah, I would just really love to get to know you more through here and then eventually through the parties when we open back up. But I would just love for you to give a quick intro on who you are and what it is that you contribute to the queer community here of Sydney and Australia and worldwide.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much for having me along. I think we should just acknowledge that we are recording on Gadigal land and just how grateful we all are that we get to create communities on this ancient land. And yeah, that's very, very humbled by the opportunities we get to do in spaces like the Red Rattler, especially in Redfern, and then the satellite spaces we occupy. And yeah, it's really great. So origin story, I grew up in Tasmania. I sort of battled with my internal acknowledgement of who I am and my sexuality and so on, and that was because the homosexuality was forbidden in Tasmania. There was anti-sodomy laws that existed, and I grew up going to marches and resisting the intense homophobic government that were in power during my formative teenage years. And that gave me a really beautiful perspective of just how the rest of the world exists. And it was strange because the first time I came to Sydney, I've been coming to Sydney regularly to stay with my grandmother, but never acknowledged that there is this huge community here. And some friends from Tasmania brought me up here for summer. I said, we're going to take you to Sydney for summer and you should just be aware of that. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I can see my grandma. And they were just like, we're going to take you to Sydney. And yeah, it was literally child in a candy store getting up here and seeing. At that time was early 90s in Oxford Street, and that place had the similar energy to what it's like in Castro Street. Unfortunately, it's dissipated since then. But I, at the same time, was like Goldilocks, going in, like, this bar's too girly and this bar's too heavy and this bar's no good enough. And eventually found a space which was a sex club underneath the Imperial Hotel that had sawdust on the floor and a motorbike and a bathtub. And wow, this is great. And so more or less had 2 weeks here for summer, went back and just packed everything up and moved up here. And it was when I got here and started making friends, I realized that the Oxford Street community thing was an illusion for a lot of people, and I'd get stopped at the door if I had a woman with me or my friends looked too kooky. And I met this incredible goddess named DJ Gemma.
Yeah.
And she worked in this fantastic little record store on Crown Street that I would go in and hang out with her, and we'd play records on the wrong speed and talk about occupying space for our friends and family. And that's, yeah, one night on 26 years ago, we found a little space on William Street and called this event Club Kooky. And Kooky was a diss that would stop people from getting into bars. It's like, oh, you're too kooky, mate. You can't come in.
Yeah.
So reclaiming that as sort of like, okay, all the kooky people, let's come together and celebrate who we are. Let's celebrate kookiness. And that was especially, grounded in women, in older people, in alternative looking people. And it was only going to be a one-off, and people came and really enjoyed themselves, said, can you do it again? I'm like, okay, we'll do it next week. We'll do it next week. We'll do it next week. And we stayed in that space for over 12 years. And then the Olympics came, and, we lost a lot of warehouse spaces. We lost a lot of places to gather and stuff like that. New owners took over this space on William Street, so we were kicked out. But the community were like, when's the next one? When are we doing it? We have to do this. Come on, what are you doing? So yeah, we just kept finding spaces and kept bringing people together. And over a quarter of a century later, we still exist. There are new people that are being brought to. The only way to get to people is somebody brings you. You know, we don't have street posters up or anything like that. And that clandestine energy does keep it real and keep it, you know, there are not many tourists that come in for this. They're people that need to connect with their community. And then from that, there's a space called the Bearded Tick that was brought together by some amazing visionaries. And that still exists today. And that, you know, when we are open, to be able to go in there anytime, knowing that you can be as queer as you need to be, you can, just by occupying that space, you are making community. And I see myself more as a facilitator than any sort of apex predator or anything like that. I love sharing that energy. I love bringing people together. It is my medicine. Yeah. And these two other angels that we're talking with today, we exist in that beautiful community, loving, caring space together. And we, you know, they are my family. We are family. We're giving love in a family dose is our raison d'etre. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. And I love that. I didn't know this before I read your bio, but when I was reaching out to everyone, I was like, like who are queer spaces that I can reach out to get on this podcast? And I was like, what was that thing I went to on that Mardi Gras after party that time? Club Kooky, I think it was called. And I'm like looking up on the internet, who are the people that run Club Kooky? I'm like, they got no website. It seems so exclusive to get into it. I don't know who runs it. I just guess I'll reach out to Queerhood, and then turns out I've got the same person anyways. So I got two for the price of one. Amazing. So I'm very grateful to have you here, and just to hear that happened or started 26 years ago.
So good.
Very much embracing that baby that I am right now, and just really feeling honored to have you in this space and to just learn history and culture and just where it starts and where it's continuing to go from you. So thank you so much for being here.
It's an equal exchange. Thank you for having us
here. So next I'm going to go to Kat, and my story is one that's like a close, like a target, but then I miss is I had heard of Heaps Gay for a while, and you know, again, I'm slowly coming into my journey of embracing the queer community. And I was like, Heaps Gay sounds heaps gay. I don't know if I'm ready yet. And then when we were in the last lockdowns, I think like we broke on a Wednesday night, and I had just come from therapy, and some friends messaged and they're like, hey, Heaps Gay are putting on a party in Newtown. I was like, all right, it's time that I go. And then I go, but you know, everyone is ready to party. So we get there and it's already packed out. But I ended up having the most incredible night because everyone went to go to Heaps Gay, but a lot of people couldn't make it in. But Newtown and King Street itself was just full of the queer community and people that like queer people that wanted to party. And that was the first time that like for instance, when I went to Club Kooky, it was sort of like me just looking like being the guy leaning against the wall, have a dance, go back. But this was the time I was like, I'm actually partying, meeting people, talking and embracing. And like, though I didn't go to the Heaps Gay party, I tribute it to like, the impact of your work and the people that you're calling in, that sometimes there's not enough space but it's going to spill out. And there was enough that it felt like such a safe space to explore that. So I would love to hear how you have come into this party and this forming culture of people that they're eager to get into what you do?
Yeah, okay. I have really, really grown into my queerness over the last years. So yeah, I grew up in Condobolin when I was a small child. Grew up out in Central West Condo, and then when I was about 25, I decided to go to London, and I was living in London for a while, and I was very much not in tune with my sexuality at all. I used to be a dancer when I was a small kid, so I was just spent every waking moment at rehearsals and dance Stedfords and teaching and stuff. So that was really like part of my life in a really big way, like Kylie and Michael and all of the pop stars. And so when I went to London, that just like opened up my eyes to, you know, the world and this other part of me that was so suppressed that I didn't even know about. And you know, I found these venues there was a venue in London called the George and Dragon that I stumbled upon, and actually ended up falling in love with my best friend, and it was really unrequited, and it was, you know, very heartbreaking, and it was the whole time for me, which sometimes memories, but we're friends now. She's one of my best friends, and that whole thing that I went through in that journey has made me who I am today. But that whole experience, yeah, I realized that I was a queer woman, and I was really excited to come back to Sydney and find out what that was and what that meant for me. And I got back to Sydney, and like Jonny, I went straight to Oxford Street and went to all those clubs. There's venues there called, there's a party called Moist, and another party called Bitch. And I went to some venues and some parties that were very catered towards female and lesbians and female presenting people. And then, like, you know, some clubs and things like that. And then I just didn't really had no idea of kooky at the time. I was so kind of like sheltered in a way. And I didn't even have any queer friends in Sydney. So I was just like, I just want to go out. And it was actually, the way Heaps Gay started was very, very personal. It was about me actually wanting to find a girlfriend. Hadn't even kissed a woman at the point when I'd started Heaps Gay. So it was very much around, like, I'm sure there's women out there like me that, where are they? How are we going to, you know, how do I find them? And so it was really different to Jonny in a way, because it was like, yeah, it was just very different. So yeah, I started Heaps Gay because I was working in music and events at the time, and I was flicking through, like, I think it was like a Star Observer on my lunch break, and there was an ad in the back in the classified section for a grant program that it was like $1,000 from an organization called Lesbians Incorporated, and they you could apply to do something that supported the community. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to do like a one-page Word doc. And I got the grant. And so that's sort of how it started. I sat around a table with some friends, and we were talking about the name. And back when in Condobolin, That's So Gay was really like a term that, you know, it's very like, you know, you're so gay, that's so gay. That happened a lot. And it wasn't just in Condo, it's a very Australian term that you hear everywhere. And so that was about a reclaiming of that. And so, yeah, we called it that, Heaps Gay, and had the first event at the Gladstone Hotel in 2013. Did, like Jonny, it was a fundraiser for ACON. And the whole point of the event was to create a space where anyone was welcome, essentially. It was not actually around creating a queer space. Believe it or not, it wasn't in my head at that time as a very, not uneducated, but, you know, I have learned a lot about the queer community and a lot about myself in the last 8 years. So it was very like kind of shallow-minded view, but I just want to meet a girlfriend, you know, which is so not me anymore. But I want to listen to good music, and I want to dance, and I want to have some art, and I want it to be like the George and Dragon. So it was like, yeah, it was all very confusing, but it was really great. And it ended up being there once a month for 2 years. And then the pub was sold, gentrification, that we got booted out of there, ended up just popping around the place for 3 or 4 years. And where to next? So it's been plodding along all right, I reckon. But I think Heaps Gay, it plays in this space where it's really truly accessible to everybody. And I think what I try to do I think it's evolved and changed a lot. And I think I've tried to create something that sort of changes with the things that I love and care about. And what's really important now is like collaborations with community. Like, how do we work together to create these spaces that are really special? Or how do I give agency to other queer producers and creatives to create instead of me? So it's like, it's changed a lot. And I think that that's why sort of like the brand's changed. And yeah, we're here today. Honestly, to be honest, it feels really hard to talk about this because I haven't worked or Heaps Gay for 2 years. And I was actually a little bit anxious, to be honest, because I was like, man, the first lockdown, I came out of this like really intense life. Like, and I don't know, the others can probably speak to this as well, but we're on this train in Sydney where we're going all the time and you never have this second to stop. And I felt like it was like going and what's next and how am I paying my rent? What's the next event and what am I doing? So the first lockdown was very sudden and really intense. And I was like, oh my God, it's really important that we keep community engaged. And what does that look like? We're going to do live streams. And I think, we did a pretty good job at doing that. But then getting back on board and creating all these events again, did an amazing event with Jonny at like the Sydney Town Hall, and then smashed into this lockdown again. It's like, man, we are getting like, put through this ringer, and so intense for our mental health and, for our well-being and stuff. So yeah, it's hard to think, okay, what is after this, so.
And thank you for honoring that and just being honest that that's where your current headspace is and where your emotions are, rather than trying to override it and be professional representative of Heaps Gay. You're also feeling shit, and there's full permission in this space. Yeah, so thank you. And last is Kelly. And as someone that I'm just a professional nudist, as soon as I heard the name to this event, I was like, yep. I didn't even know it was a queer space yet, but I was just like, yeah, that I need to be at this place. The name sold. And I went with Alpha Mama, a good friend of mine, my roommate, and she had been to one before. And then so me, her, and my boyfriend came along, and just going into this room of people just really embracing their bodies, their expression, dope music, like just such a kind, open vibe. I was like, yes, like, and just for me to scan the room and just be like, whoa, there's such an array of people here. Some I've met before, some I've seen around, and just, yeah, totally new, different faces and expressions and like culture, ways of dressing, expressing yourself I'd not seen before. And I'm so inspired by fashion and expression. I was like, oh yeah. I need to be at this place. And I remember we're about to go beyond PG rated, is like on the side of like the performance space, me and my boyfriend were being a little naughty, a little frisky, and you had walked past that. Like, I didn't know if you knew it me because we hadn't met or anything or been in contact before. And you're like, I can't remember the exact words, but you're like, yeah, get it, boys, or something like that. And it was like, as a person that's running this event, you'd think in any other space, it'd be like, hey, you two, like, get those hands away from when their hands are and blah, blah, blah. But it was like, yeah, get it. And then just like kept walking. I was like, okay, I like this place. But yeah, I would love to hear how you ended up in this space, running Leak Your Own Nudes, and yeah, being here in Sydney itself.
Cool. Hi, my name is Kelly. I have the pleasure and honor of working and living on Gadigal land. I live here in Redfern. I guess I'll take you to the beginning.
Please.
I was born in New Jersey, Jersey City, New Jersey, in America. My parents are of Haitian descent, so I'm West Indian, and I grew up, on the East Coast of America. And I grew up in predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods. We listened to all types of music from like merengue, salsa, hip hop, like everything. Nothing was not on the table. Everything was meant to be consumed. And when you went to a party, you heard a little bit of everything. So that's just a little bit to let you know my musical taste. I went to college, studied, and then I found myself in San Francisco, California in my early 20s. And San Francisco really like shaped me and how I saw and understood the world. You know, I think a lot of people use the word queer, but when I use the word queer, I'm talking about being politically minded. I'm talking about like being conscious of folks' intersections. So like for me, being queer was just such a big part of my identity, and I really sought after queer spaces where I felt like all were welcome, spaces where I felt like everyone had room to be themselves, and spaces where people could see reflections of themselves in the room. So and I feel really fortunate because I feel like I was in San Francisco at a time where a lot of that was happening. So I owe a lot of how I produce events and how I think about events to my time in San Francisco. You know, but what's funny is I actually produced my first event here in Australia. I fell in love one San Francisco Pride with this very hot Australian man who is now my husband. We've been married for 10 years, which it feels very crazy. And I followed him to Melbourne. And when we were in Narm, I couldn't work because I was just on a tourist visa, and I was just like, oh, what am I gonna do with myself? And I had always wanted or had this desire to throw a party. And someone was like, why don't you just try to throw a party? And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to throw a party. And I produced my first queer event in Melbourne, and it went really well. It was a mixture of like live performance and DJs, and it was like such an extraordinary experience. And I just remember my husband being like, oh, you know, like this for me feels like very similar to a party, to the very first queer party I went to called Club Kooky in Sydney. He was like, we need to go up to Sydney and try to see if there's a Club Kooky going on and go to a party. So we came up to, and this is like 2011, came up to Sydney for Mardi Gras and had this really extraordinary experience, and met all these people. And I was like, oh yeah, this is the vibe. This is it. Like it was intergenerational, like a great like variety of gender expressions and such amazing fashion and such beautiful music. I was like, oh, this is the vibe. This is where I want to be. But I had to go back to America because I was only on a tourist visa. And right before I decided to leave back to America, my husband and I decided to get married. And the plan was for me to come back to Australia and live and continue to produce events. But I ended up, I got a job opportunity in San Francisco, and Spence actually ended up moving to San Francisco, and we lived there for 6 years. And while we were there, I was like, oh, you know, I want to continue producing events. What would producing an event in San Francisco look like? And, you know, San Francisco is this really interesting city. It's actually only 7 miles by 7. It's very small. It's a peninsula. Everybody knows each other. And San Francisco actually used to have a really high Black population, but because of gentrification and the tech boom, lots of Black people started to leave San Francisco. And I was going to all these events, and I wasn't seeing Black DJs, Black performers, or very many Black people in the audience. And I was like, oh, I want to host an event, because I had so many Black friends in San Francisco where we could just remember that we actually still are here, we exist. And I wanted to produce an event where we can take up some space, you know, and come together in celebration. So I had been going to this really rad event in Chinatown in 2012. And this gentleman named David Richardson was the producer and DJ. And I remember there would be a DJ and he would do live drumming over the DJ set. And I was like, oh, I want to work with this person. And I was like, hey, I've been thinking about producing an event. Would you like to collaborate? And he was like, yeah. I told him my idea and he was super down. And Swagger Like Us was born. And that was in 2012. We threw our first like daytime party at this really beautiful venue, queer venue in San Francisco called El Rio. And yeah, and kind of the ethos for the party was like, I'm going to hire almost exclusively Black and brown DJs and performers. We're gonna make sure we always have women identified folks on the bill. We're just gonna do everything everyone else isn't doing. Like whatever the rule is, we're gonna break that and we're just gonna make our own rule and we'll see what happens. And like people really responded to it. And you know, our first party had 300 people at it. And I was like, whoa, who are all these people? What are they doing here? And people were just like, oh, you have something here. You really need to continue this energy, kind of similar to Johnny's story. Like, you know, everyone was like, when are you doing the next one? And I was like, okay, let's see if I could get a date. And I got a date and it just kept happening and happening. And, you know, we've been producing Swagger since 2012. The party is 9 years old now. And I feel super fortunate that it's still happening in some capacity in San Francisco and in California. And then I moved to Sydney 3 years ago. And when I moved to Sydney, I was like, oh, I want to continue to produce events, but I want to do something different. And another thing I loved about San Francisco is how much people really celebrate the body in San Francisco. Like there are sex parties, there are underwear parties, there are like all different, there's lots of opportunities to get undressed in San Francisco. And I was like trying to find that in Sydney and I was like, oh, like where are the like sex parties? Where are like the underwear parties? And people were like, yeah, those kind of exist here, but they're like really like hyper masculine spaces and they're very white spaces. I don't know if that's going to be your vibe. And I was like, oh, maybe I just need to produce something. And I happened to be very good friends with the owner of the Bearded Tit, Joy. And I like pitched her my idea, and Joy is such a loving, down for anything person. She was like, yeah, sounds good, let's do it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna invite a whole bunch of people to come to your venue, take off their clothes and party. And she was like, yep, I love that idea. Sign me up. Epic. And yeah, and Leak Your Own Nudes was born. And from the very beginning, like people just like showed up, took off their clothes and had a really extraordinary time. And I also want to say, like, I don't want to scare people from coming to the party. Like at its core, Leak Your Own Nudes is actually quite wholesome. It's just a whole bunch of people dancing in their underwear. Like, and that to me felt really good. Like, you know, and you know, sometimes there are moments where people get a little cheeky, and that's also okay.
Yes.
And Leak Your Own Nudes has been happening now for, I think, 3 years. And we've had the pleasure of producing parties here in Sydney and in Narm. And I just feel super fortunate to add to the, like, the beautiful landscape of events that already happen in Sydney. I feel very inspired by Johnny and Kat, you know. I've been to both of their events, and you know, I love what they do, and yeah, and they were kind of like my first experiences with queer spaces in Sydney. So thank you both for what you do, and yeah, and it's what I do, and you know, I not only produce events for myself, but I like work as a producer for other folks, and yeah, and it's been a really rad experience living here. Yeah. That's me.
Epic. Yes. Thank you for sharing. What a journey. All three of you, such an epic journey into it. And I love that, there's just each of you have had a moment of being like, I wish this thing existed because I've tasted it before. And now I want to keep eating it. Like I want to keep having that nourishing meal and it's not available here. So I'm going to serve it up, and just how successful that is, and just that hunger that other people are feeling, that you've gone, hey, this is for all. I really, really love that. And that I've been able to, eat some of the fruits of your labor as well, which has just been so beautiful. And I feel like, as Kat was saying earlier, what I would love to definitely acknowledge right now is this work that you do is very restricted by COVID and lockdowns and the current situation. And I don't know where you're at, but I know for me, when I can't do work, when that's like, because work is more than work for me, it's my purpose. It's what makes me feel alive. It's not me checking in and out of something to make money. Yes, I do make money and I do check in and out, but it's something that makes me feel alive and makes me feel worthy and like I deserve to have my place of what I've created in my life. Sometimes when I can't work, the things that are shiny around me aren't as shiny, and I would just love to speak to that and address that and give it space, and just hear from each of you whatever you feel to share about what that does to you when you've created something so beautiful and nourishing, when you can't have that as much or at all right now. And just popcorn style, whoever feels to take that one, pop off.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak on that. I think throughout I still remember the day when COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, and that week I lost a year's worth of work. So like every contract I had, every international trip I had, it all just like came crumbling down. And I had this and I was producing full time at the time for myself, and I had to ask myself, like, who am I if I can't do this work? Like what, and fortunate for me, I had just had a baby. My partner and I had just had a baby, so I had this beautiful new soul to focus my energy and intention on, and I just really dived into becoming a father. And I feel so grateful. I feel like Lexi saved me at that time, because I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have him to kind of anchor me, because this work was my anchor, So for me, it's been a really hard experience. Who are you when you can't produce? Who are you when you can't bring community together? It's literally has been the foundation of my identity for over a decade.
Yeah, that's heavy. And I'm grateful to hear that you have Lexi and that you are finding new life in new life. Yeah,
I think you really nailed it when you said that your work is a sense of purpose. Like, a sense of purpose is what I miss every single day. It's like, what's the day? It's like, okay, I know I've got to take my dog for a walk to the park. Thank God. What time will I do that? Okay, cool. I've got to make sure that I eat my dinner. But it's like that sense of purpose and the anxiety around what is actually next. Like with the news that Jonny referred to earlier in regards to this, we've just found out that in Gladys has said that when it gets to 70%, the bars are going to open up again, and we've basically heard what the restrictions are. And I think that today is the first day it's like because of unknown and not really knowing how to plan and what to plan and or when this is going to end has just been the hardest, I think, for me. I'm really anxious as well around, I'm really, really anxious actually about the arts sector in general, and our arts scene in Sydney, because like we've had lockouts and then we lost a bunch of creative spaces, and now we've had a pandemic and we're losing a bunch of creative spaces just to, you know, developments and gentrification, whatever. It's like, I just don't know. We don't have enough spaces for us to create these events for communities. So what's going to happen is, who knows, like, how are we going to kind of rebuild this beautiful scene that we had 2 years ago, you know? So it's like there's anxiety around that as well. So yeah, I don't know. It's very, very hard.
Yeah. I hear that anxiety, and I used to run events, and there's actually a little funny, I'll just go off on a tangent for a moment of laughter, so I used to run very like underground hip hop events. It's very hyper masculine, and we were running them monthly at Civic Underground, and we lost that venue, and I'm scrambling around trying to find a venue, and I end up at Imperial Underground, and I have no clue about any of the history of there. And I'm like, wow, like all of a sudden now hyper masculine hip hop events are very like queer. I don't know where all these people are coming from. And I just years later understood with the history and still what the Imperial does to this day, but like just that ignorance and maybe a little bit of a subconscious trying to get myself into the scene. But like, I couldn't imagine when I was making a living off running events, what it would feel like right now. So I feel a lot of empathy to the extent that I can. Like, I can't fully understand what it's like to be in your position, in all three of your positions, but I am grateful to hear that there is this news, as Jonny said earlier, that there's a disco ball at the end of this tunnel at the moment, and not a train.
Yeah. And I think like Kelly, Kat and I have our children that are four-legged children, but they do center your day that you think, how can I give more love to my child? And without them, it would have been a really different time, right, Kat? It's like, yeah, I can completely relate. I don't have to change George Michael's nappies, but I still have to feed him and cuddle him, and, you know, I guess poo bags are his nappy or something like that. But yes, it's when my whole reason for existing is bringing people together and hugging, and they're like, absolutely not during COVID. So it's like, oh, okay, how do I reinvent myself? And it's just finding patience and learning how to breathe and know that this is a pause and we will be able to gather again. And it's encouraging to see things opening up in the Northern Hemisphere, but at the same time, lots of our friends went to Provincetown, double vaxxed, and became sick because, you know, we're not immune even being vaccinated. So we're gonna, the knowledge that we don't want to start super spreader events and things like that doesn't mean, you know, there's not going to be like Freedom Day is October 15th and we're going to have a rave that don't. It's going to be a very gradual stepping back into what we're doing. But yeah, our reason for being on this planet is to facilitate the resonation of joy. And it's beautiful that the owner of the Bearded Tit is named that way, because that's exactly, her spirit is what we, you know, what we believe in, and it's the light that we want to share.
Yeah.
Definitely going to be a very long time before we come back. So we're going to have to learn how to create community and space together in other ways. Yeah, so we'll have to really come together as a community and collaborate and, you know, talk about what that looks like and just do anything that we can really to kind of create these communities and cuddles again and hug.
Yeah, I already have this sense of like excitement from an outside perspective of remembering this conversation, and in 3 months, 6 months, a year, seeing the ways that you all pivot and adjust and come together and create new and just do what you've already done before, is go, this thing didn't exist and now it exists again here and again here and again here. That's really exciting for me. And yeah, to see, like, for lack of a better term, like my elders really like cultivate and inspire. And that's one thing I'm really curious about you know, like I was saying to you all before, reading over some of the bios and some of the associations, me going, oh man, I am not very cultured on queer spaces and like who's the popping person and who's this and who's that. But what I did see in Jonny's bio, like working with people like George Michael and Kylie Minogue, and I'm like, okay, that's like undoubtedly, I know they're queer icons. And I'm curious to hear for yourself, like what it's like not only getting to produce events and music and culture, but to connect with people that are icons, that are idols, that have just made such an impact, and for you to be someone that contributed to that impact.
Yeah, it's literally all to do with where I come from, and you know, doing events with Gemma here in Sydney, and with my musical brother Paul Mac. You know, I was connected with this amazing artist named JD Sampson, who comes from a rich history of queer bands and queer events and so on, and reached out to them in the back days of MySpace, like, can we do a remix for you? And of course. So doing a remix for an artist is like having a tiny little child. You make something together, and it's not ephemeral because it exists on people's devices and exists on the dance floors that we play at and so on. And that remix led to being connected with LCD Sound System, which was like amazing. Wow. Really love those guys. You know, James Murphy is a beautiful, beautiful bear who was so excited when he came to Australia to connect with us and gave us his child to remix. And that led to his label saying, oh, you guys should connect with Kylie. Yeah, I think we can do that.
We'll move some things around, I guess.
Yeah, amazing. And you know, somehow ended up taking her dancing till 7 a.m. in Ibiza, doing a remix for her responding after a month after we submitted it, to sort of like, what's happening? And yeah, we got a little note from her, which was only, you know, 1.5 lines saying, thank you so much. This reminds me of our night out together, which is so beautiful. Yeah, and George Michael, my ex-boyfriend, who worked as a sex worker in London, was very well connected with him. So when he came to Australia, he was like, come and smoke a spliff with George Michael. I was like, fuck yeah. And I literally wasn't even smoking at the time, but I was like, I'm going to start again tonight.
Yeah.
And walked into his hotel room as he's holding his device going, oh, my iPod's broken. Has anyone got any music? I'm just like, no. And watched him, you know, just listen to music. And he got up and started dancing. And George Michael dances like George Michael. And I was like, this is amazing. What is this? And I was like, oh, it's this girl, this person named JD Sampson. They have a band, and he was listening to the lyrics really intently. He was like, does that say, I want to fuck my friends? I was like, yes, yeah. The song's called Credit Card Babies. And he was like, oh, the first song we released was called Credit Card Baby. That's amazing. Play it again. So rewind, played it again, kept dancing, eyes closed. And was like, I want this playing when I go on stage in Sydney tomorrow night. Can you make up a tape for me? So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he just said, play me everything you've got. And so I played in our sort of remix playlist. And it's like, okay, just I've got a DJ touring with me, but I don't like what he's doing. So make a mix and bring it tomorrow night. And yeah, so the next night in the stadium of 70,000 people, these songs came out and played, and people were dancing, and yeah, and he came out on stage singing along to this song. It's like, okay, I start now. Beautiful. And of course, ended up in London at a festival called Lovebox, and he showed up to hang out with me and me and Paul. It's like, oh, okay. And backstage people were literally coming up like, can you please introduce me? You know, it's like, yeah, okay. So George, this is Beth Ditto. And George's like, oh my God, I love your cover of Taylor Swift by Cuddle Me. And they were both speechless, and he was really humbled to be in her presence. And Robin came for a cuddle, and all these different others. And somehow we were a bridge for him into all these contemporary queer spaces. But even in Sydney, he came to the Red Rattler. He would walk down and hang out on King Street, and people would come up to him and just be like, and he'd be like, "What? Tell me about you. What's going on? What are you doing today?" And that person, you know, him, Kylie, Grace Jones, all these incredible iconic artists are at the core of themselves really lovely, and that's why they are part of our community and why we care about them so much. But for them as well, you know, they like, "Oh, you're DJing a gay sauna. Tell me more about that. I really want to hear that story, you know, or tell me about, you know, working with this lesbian DJ as a partnership, what's that's like." And it made me realize that what we do is valid. You know, these incredible superstars exist, but they are fascinated by how a community stays together. And you know, we took George Michael down to Sydney Park late at night to have sex with someone. You know, of course, got there and there's only one bear there because it's not like Hampstead Heath. But yeah, this one bear was just like, "Is that really him?" Like,
oh my God.
Like, you know, so, but you know, these people love getting hugged. These people love listening to music. These people love hearing about stories of community. And yeah, I've just been super, super, super lucky this being at one moment in time that leads onto that, leads onto that, leads onto that. And yeah, and at the same time, I love coming in and playing at the Beauty Tit where it's free to get in and we can cuddle everyone and play this music. And the connection of these artists' music for us, for a lot of people, it's their second safe space next to the womb, you know, that when we come out and stuff like that and hear Bromsky Beat or Frankie Goes to Hollywood or anything like that, we've got, or Robin, we know that we belong. And it's such an intimate thing because, you know, especially listening to music in your headphones, in Tasmania, that was definitely a life bridge for me, music. And now I have the ability to share that with people. So it's it's very, I'm not being a wanker by saying it's holistic. Our connection with queerness and music, that's definitely,
Beautiful. Wow. What like this again, like
I also just want to say to Jonny, thank you, because of Jonny, I actually have a George Michael story. Because Jonny introduced me and Spence to George Michael, and there's this really amazing photo of me and Spencer. I remember because when you brought him to the Rat, Spence and I were DJing that night, and there's this really amazing photo of me and Spence totally munted with George Michael in the middle of us, and we're like sweaty and maybe gurning and look crazy, and George is just like there being all cool, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that happened.
Wow.
Yeah, he was literally like, "Please introduce me to those DJs. Please, can I meet the DJs?" Like, yeah, Dad, come on. They want to be. Yes.
I love the humility and just like, just hearing these moments of, you know, especially at Sydney Park, of like, just someone's like, never in my wildest dreams, but also in my wildest dreams did I imagine this could happen right now, you know, like just that, not only dealing with starstruck, but some of the locations that these starstruck moments could happen. And for, to hear these stories on just in this space right now, like even I'm starstruck from the story, and I'm however many degrees away from the reality of that. So thank you so much for bringing this legacy that you've created in people's lives into this platform. And that takes me to Kat, as I was mentioning, around like reading over Heaps Gay bio and then reading some of these names. I'm like, I'm sure these names are like huge names that, you know, might not be Kylie or George Michael, but to a lot of people are really epic. And the one that stood out for me was Cake's a Killer. I'm like, okay, I know of them. But I'm curious to hear about your journey of connecting and being able to put on parties with some of the most iconic queer names that maybe all of mainstream or any kind of society outside of queer culture don't know about, but to the queer community is like, oh my God, like you got this person and your ability to work with them.
Yeah, definitely. I'll say that, what makes me so excited is actually the emerging and underground queer artists that we get to work with every day. Like there is so many talented artists in Sydney and in Australia that are just next level. And if these queer spaces didn't exist, they wouldn't have the platform to kind of, work on their acts and work on their expertise before stepping out onto these major stages. So that's the thing that makes me happy every day, and that's why I love to do Heaps Gay. But I'm just trying to think who we had. Yeah, Cakes Tequila played the street party, and that was really exciting for me because I've always loved Cakes Tequila. And then we've had Leaf also perform. A big one for me was last year. Dorian Electra played the Mardi Gras party, and I'm like obsessed with them on Instagram. And so when they were like, yeah, do you want to play the party? I was like, this is going to be amazing. And it's so wonderful now to see them finally getting, they're incredible in their own right, but they're now on the Gaga remix album. And yeah, wow. I got to work with Pablo Vittar when I was at Mardi Gras in 2020, and actually also meeting Dua and Sam Smith, but they're obviously big main artists and had nothing to do with UK whatsoever. I just happened to, which is cool. But yeah, there's like I think that's why these spaces are so important. It's because for me it is so much about like the creativity that comes out of them. Like I remember vividly seeing like Glitter Supernova at the Kooky at the Opera House, which was incredible. And like I've seen there's like the Kingpins and Emma Price, and there's all these artists that have just been so they've kind of been inspiration for the artists that have come after them and stuff. So that's what makes me
absolutely. With Heaps Gay at the Town Hall, Shaun Moore, Mel Ray, the House of Silky, the House of Slay, Jamaica Moana, all these people are superstars as well. Their talent is equal to the Kylies and Georges and stuff like that, and they're ours. Electric Fields, and a lot of them are queer performers of colour as well. And so to be able to share our platform for them is, it's so wholesome and so giving and so rewarding, right?
Yeah. And I really appreciate you saying that, Jonny, because I think what I love about how you and Kat curate events is, and even how, and it reminds me of the way I curate events, is you guys really give space to emerging talent, because there's so much extraordinary emerging talent right here. And it's been really beautiful to just like see these amazing people who lots of them I get to call friends as well, not only be received well for their talent, but to be paid appropriately for their talent. A lot of times these queer artists get asked to do things for like free or for pennies, and it's so nice to know spaces where people are actually getting actual coin to do what they love to do. So I really appreciate that about how the both of you work.
Yeah, I would definitely love to highlight one person I definitely seen come through Heaps Gay, as I have a background in underground hip hop, is Jamaz on Mars. And Jamaz, is such an extraordinary, unapologetic, brilliant musician. And just, in what was available for Jamaz to perform before I saw him jump on Heaps Gay, I was like, when I saw that happen and I saw this community coming towards Jamaz, I was like, this is great. I wasn't fully aware with Heaps Gay, but just seeing what was happening there and then looking through, and I know Alpha Mama's performed there and a few of my other friends that, Alpha Mama has her stripes, but then I saw some younger acts really coming up through the space and being able to identify with the community that is outside of just the regular, and especially something like hip hop. Like at one point I was managing Tucker from Fundamentals, and bringing Jamaz on some of the tour was amazing. But then just seeing the reactions and for the community to go, oh wow, there's this phenomenal talent. I really would love to just give the flowers on seeing how much that affected Jamaz through my eyes. So yeah, emerging talent and giving that platform is really incredible. And that's what I've heard. As I said, I've not been to the Bearded Tit, but friends telling me, going, oh, you've got to go to the Bearded Tit. It's like you get to see these baby artists, maybe even their first performance, like go and do it. And whether they're extraordinary or they're terrible or they're this or they're that, they feel like superstars when they're there, and the crowd lets them know you are a superstar. Like you are a Kylie, you are a George in this place right here. And that's just like you don't get to hear that too often. So I really want to just go, yeah, thank you for creating those kinds of spaces. And even having not been there, I'm hearing about it, and I would love to continue to use this platform to share even things that I've not been involved with, to go, yeah, like these spaces do exist. And that's a part of my work so I work in personal development, and over the recent year, more and more queer people are reaching out to me for work, and a lot of stuff coming around body image and community. I've been sending them to Leak Your Own Nudes. Hey, you got to check out this party, go here. And just like from people that maybe felt quite repressed in their sexuality and around their bodies, and then hearing the reports back, I went to that Leak Your Own Nudes. Oh my God, like it was amazing. And just like the liberation that people get to have by going to this space is just, I can't like commend it enough to go like, thank you for creating a space like that. And I'm curious to hear about the feedback that you get and what you learn and the lessons you get from people coming to these spaces, and the praises that you do get around Leak Your Own Nudes, Kelly.
Yeah. Another person who is a big inspiration to me is a writer and thinker by the name of Jose Esteban Munoz. And Jose talks a lot about creating queer utopic spaces, but like not as something that exists forever, but as something that is fleeting, these moments in time where people can truly experience liberation and freedom. And I think that really resonates with me. Like when I am thinking about producing an event, I'm just like, I want to create a space where like folks can really feel like they can be their most authentic self, even for a brief moment. Because I know it's complicated. You can't be maybe your authentic self like 24/7, because maybe you work at a conservative office, or maybe they're just, for whatever reasons, that we just have limitations on really resonating and vibrating the way that we would like to vibrate. And I really wanted to like create a space where people can like feel their bodies and love their bodies and just be in their bodies and not worry, and I've gotten lots of really great messages from folks about Leak Your Own Nudes in particular, from women identified folks who are like, thank you for holding a space for me to like be half dressed or not wear a top. Like so many like women identified folks who are like, oh, I go to gay boy parties all the time, and gay boys are dancing around without a shirt, and sometimes I wish I could dance around without my shirt on. And I feel like your party is one of the few spaces that I can do that, and it's okay, and no one's gonna like look at me weird or try to touch me, and if someone did, I would be supported, and that to me means the world, to be able to hold space for people to really like be in their bodies.
And I would love if you have any words of offering for anyone that's listening that has either heard about it or just hearing about it now, that goes, oh, I I could never, like my body type isn't right, or my whatever, any stories that plague and conditioning around societal norms or whatever it is, where they feel not welcome or like them as a person couldn't go. Do you have any words of encouragement to go like you could?
Yeah, I always like to tell people too that like there is also room for you to come to one of my events and not take your clothes off. Like if you wanted to like check out the space, you're welcome to come and be dressed however you feel or whatever ways that make you feel comfortable and just like feel the vibe. I will say that almost all the time when someone does that, they end up in their underwear by the end of the night. And it's really beautiful to see because I think people catch the vibe really quick and it's very apparent that like all bodies are welcome. Yeah, I don't know. And I feel like also Leak Your Own Nudes is just one of those things that you just need to experience. It's like, it's hard for me to like talk about it. You just need to like be in the space and feel the vibe. Yeah.
So the terms and conditions, the in the fine print is, bigger print is come in whatever you want, however you look, you wear as many layers of clothing, but in the tiny writing is, but you'll probably end up in your underwear. Beautiful. And I maybe want to ask a question that's a little bit more on the serious side, and whoever feels to answer it is, as someone, again, you're in the space expressing my queerness as of this year, from a place that can be a safe space and have community. I've also faced like people in the queer community wanting to cancel for art expression or for the ways that showing up in inclusivity and just expressing and maybe not always ticking all the boxes or getting included with people that have been seen as problematic or whatever it is, how that ties into your work and how you are, if you ever come against any criticism from your own community, and how you are facing that and moving forward and rising up, if any of you are facing that, because I certainly have.
I think I want to start off by saying that like the goal isn't to be perfect, the goal is to be accountable, right? So like we're all humans and we're all gonna make mistakes, and it's about who you are when you make that mistake, how you show up for your community when you make a mistake. And I can say that everyone, Kat and Jonny in particular, are two extraordinary souls who are always accountable and always show up. So I feel really extraordinary to be in such great company. And cancel culture, look, the queer community is so small. We're all that we got. If we cancel each other, who's going to be left?
Yeah.
And I think that we need to figure out, how do we come back to each other? How do we like have conversations with our family and heal and move forward? And that's my vibe. That's where I'm at, you know?
Yeah. Or hearing origin stories and what you're doing right now, that I can't, for all three of you, I can't imagine that's like anyone is intentionally doing anything wrong. And it sounds like there's such a beautiful level of accountability, because to me, that's what tribe is for. And just hearing, for three people that I don't fully know and I've only met briefly through the internet, like, and then being surprised, oh, wow, you three are so connected. Like, I would like to imagine that if one person made a mistake or did something wrong, that the others would be there to go, hey, this is a new way to look, or hey, let me support you through that. So yeah, I guess that's what I've wanted to hear, is just how that works between everybody in this beautiful camaraderie that you've got.
Yeah, it's definitely, there is a family that exists between the three of us, but for the wider community as well. And there's always going to be someone who will come in to diss you or be negative or, whatever. That will always exist, will always be. And you have to listen to those voices and see whether you can come and find some common ground and so on. And usually we can, because our intention is to build community and build love and build spaces that are utopian, that we can all exist in. So yeah, I think, when one of us is being harassed or whatever, we're there immediately to hold them and go, remember what we do. This is that we are trying to create spaces that not only resonate joy but also heal and create an idea that everyone belongs. Yeah. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Just echo both of your comments on that. Like, lateral violence sadly will exist and will always exist within our community and every type of subculture. Like, it's always going to be, and it's just having that really open dialogue and having that communication. Unfortunately, there's things like social media now where people will just jump on the back of something without actually listening to two sides of a story, which you can't always control, and sometimes it's really, really upsetting. And I guess for me, I just try to be really transparent all the time. And what I've learned, I think one of the biggest learnings for me over the last 8 years would be about community consultation, because we create communities for community essentially at the end of the day. And so to make sure that it's relevant and to make sure that we're doing what we want to do and what the community needs or what the needs of the community are, it's about listening and hearing from community and working towards something together. But yeah, social media is a bit of a scary one, and sometimes it's about just kind of blocking it out, really, because we're all human at the end of the day, as Kelly said, and so we just have to manage it the way we can.
It's wild how social media has helped us so much, growing our platforms and getting our word out and allowing us to be more expressive more of the time. But then at the same time, there's the other side that there's more availability for someone to want to tear you down or have opinions about you. But I am so happy to hear that, there is this, like, if you're holding space for community, yes, you are a part of that community, but there is that certain level of being a facilitator, but seeing that, for instance, between you three, and I'm sure there's more of like, and we're our own community and we hold space for one another. So I love that. And what I maybe would like to finish with some final words from everyone is, for people that have looked to you three, whether they knew it was you three that hosting these parties, or anyone that's just missing queer safe spaces in their lockdown period, any words of offering you have around finding that safety and that community from a place of isolation? Or maybe anything that you are offering. I don't know if you have anything coming up or any little groups or things that you connect to feel that community right now.
Yeah, I think if it was the last lockdown, I would have said, there's live streams and there's forums and stuff, but I think everyone's sort of feeling it a little bit more this time. And everyone's in their own silos, which is actually quite scary. If there is anybody, like, we've all got social channels and things like that, like, reach out, but hang in there, because we're going to, as Jonny said, that mirror ball's already started spinning. We're ready to get under it and have a boogie. So we will be back soon.
Yes. Beautiful. Yes.
Totally. Absolutely. I have faith is what I say, that, we will come together again. This is a temporary blip in the long history that precedes us and this beautiful future that's ahead of us. And you belong. And we're all out there available to message on the apps, and we do respond because we do care. It certainly isn't just about making money for us. It is about building something that's way stronger and beyond finances. It's, for all of us, it's emotional and spiritual. And if you are listening to us and you want to be a part of it, just drop a message and we can send electronic hugs to each other. You're definitely not alone. We all came from spaces where we were alone, and part of our practice is to make sure that we also are cared for. And because you give a hug, you get a hug. Not simple as that.
Yes. I love that. Give a hug, you get a hug.
I would like anyone who's listening to know that, like, you know, we're all already thinking about like how we get back together safely. You know, I think a lot of what I'm trying to imagine or reimagine is how we bring community together in safe ways. You know, how do we celebrate and gather and hug and do all the things in a way that makes sense for our new world. So like we're all having those visions and holding those visions and like dreaming of those dreams, and like all those things are in the work, and like, yeah, it's coming soon. That, like Jonny said, the mirror ball has already started to spin, and I can see it.
Yes. This mirror ball analogy is actually really hitting correctly for me. So yeah, I want to thank the three of you just very deeply for showing up, for sharing so much wisdom and truth and honesty and your emotions and your vulnerability and your power and just the leaders that you are. I really see that. I witnessed that in all of you, and I know that that's going to come through so clear to all the listeners. So thank you so much for sharing yourself.
Thank you for bringing us together. It's so great to see my brother and sister here. It's it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
truly.
She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called
Curious
Conversation.
Curious
Conversation. Nowadays,